SpaceX, Falcon Heavy, spaceplanes, space launches, NASA, Boeing X-37, Kennedy Space Center, and the United States Space Force. 7 Hubant new video. Kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel for informative video and more videos just like this. SpaceX makes history with Falcon Heavy's first national security launch. SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket successfully lifted off yesterday from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, marking the powerful rocket's first national security space mission. The classified payload, known as USSF-44, was commissioned by the U.S. Space Force and is believed to be a spy satellite. The launch marks a major milestone for SpaceX, certifying Falcon Heavy for critical national security missions. USSF-44 was deployed into orbit after a smooth 3-hour ride aboard the rocket. Consisting of 3 Falcon 9 cores strapped together, Falcon Heavy is currently the world's most powerful operational rocket. This was the 4th overall launch for the vehicle since its debut in 2018. SpaceX aims for first orbital flight of Starship in coming weeks. In more SpaceX news, the company is targeting the first orbital test flight of its next-generation Starship vehicle in the coming weeks. The launch will take place from SpaceX's Starbase facility in Texas. Starship is a fully reusable rocket system designed to carry cargo and crews to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Several key tests have recently been completed, including a full fueling test and a successful static fire of the vehicle's 33 Raptor engines. If successful, the upcoming orbital flight would represent a major milestone for SpaceX's ambitious Starship program. NASA pushes forward DART mission to test asteroid deflection. NASA is continuing preparations for the launch of its Double Asteroid Redirection Test, DART, mission, now slated for November 24. The spacecraft will deliberately crash into the small moon Dimorphos to test the viability of deflecting hazardous asteroids. DART will be launched aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from California. It will then take a year-long journey to intercept Dimorphos and adjust its orbit around the larger asteroid Didymos. The impact will be monitored by ground telescopes and a miniature cube satellite provided by the Italian Space Agency. Boeing's X-37B spaceplane breaks record for longest orbital flight. The Boeing X-37B spaceplane has now spent 908 days in orbit, breaking its previous record for the longest flight duration. The uncrewed and reusable vehicle launched atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket in 2020. The U.S. Space Force has remained tight-lipped about the objectives for this 6th X-37B mission. Possible experiments include testing new technologies like advanced guidance, navigation and control systems. The spaceplane also has a materials experiment aboard studying the effects of long-duration space exposure. With its capability to stay in orbit for years, the X-37B provides flexibility to conduct experiments and test systems. Space Force eyes renewed Cape Canaveral launch capabilities. The United States Space Force is looking to expand launch capabilities at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Upgrades are planned for Launch Complex 40 and existing pads will be reconfigured to support new vehicles like SpaceX's Heavy and Vulcan Centaur rockets. The Space Force took over operations at the Cape from NASA and is optimizing America's premier launch site for national security missions. Blue Origin also plans to start launching its New Glenn rocket from adjacent Cape Canaveral Air Force Station around 2024. The Cape is set to see its busiest launch manifest in decades. Kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel for informative video and more videos just like this. NASA solidifies plans for moon-orbiting space station. NASA is firming up designs and partners for the Lunar Gateway, a proposed moon-orbiting space station seen as a successor to the International Space Station. The orbital outpost will serve as a staging ground for missions to the lunar surface and eventually Mars. The initial gateway configuration will include contributions from NASA, the European Space Agency, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency. Modules will provide habitation, logistics, airlocks, power, thermal control, and science capabilities. NASA aims to launch the first 2 elements in late 2024. The Gateway will enable long-duration crew stays in orbit and reusable landers to ferry astronauts between the station and the Moon's surface. This infrastructure is key to establishing a sustained human presence on the Moon as part of the Artemis program. Relativity Space readies for first orbital launch of 3D printed rocket. Relativity Space, the startup leveraging 3D printing to build rockets, is gearing up this year for the first orbital launch of its Terran 1 vehicle from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. Relativity's innovative approach uses giant 3D printers and proprietary alloys to construct nearly the entire rocket. The company says this disruptive method simplifies supply chains and production compared to traditional manufacturing. Only a few components like electronics still need to be sourced conventionally. Relativity has conducted several test firings of rocket engines and stages as it prepares the Terran 1 for maiden flight. If successful, the launch will validate Relativity's vision to 3D print the first entirely reusable rocket. The company already has contracts booked with NASA, Iridium, OneWeb and others. China aims for 70 space launches in 2023. China is targeting a record 70 orbital launch attempts in 2023 as it continues ramping up its space activities. The ambitious manifest includes delivering additional modules to complete China's permanently crewed Tiangong space station. Manned Shenzhou spacecraft and robotic Tianzhou cargo ships will transport astronauts and supplies to the orbital outpost. China also aims to launch the final Beidou navigation satellites this year. Additional launches will deploy more Gaofen Earth observation spacecraft, Hongyan Internet satellites and other payloads. The unprecedented launch pace demonstrates China's status as a major space power. It intends to finish Tiangong construction and mount crewed lunar missions later this decade. China's growing launch capabilities and technological prowess pose an increasing challenge to American space leadership. ULA rolls out Vulcan Centaur rocket for debut launch. United Launch Alliance recently rolled out its first Vulcan Centaur rocket to the launch pad at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It will undergo preparations for an upcoming demo mission named Straight Up. Vulcan Centaur is ULA's next-generation launch system, designed to be powerful yet affordable. It retains the proven Centaur upper stage but replaces the Atlas and Delta rocket families with new technologies like Blue Origin's B-4 engines. The maiden flight will deliver Astrobotic's Peregrine lunar lander to space. If successful, Vulcan Centaur will start taking over launches for ULA's legacy rockets. The system is uniquely tailored to support complex missions for the Space Force and commercial customers. Vulcan aims to maintain ULA's track record of reliable access to space. Russia struggles with latest ISS cargo ship failure. Russia continues to grapple with quality control and supply chain issues in its space program following the latest loss of an uncrewed Progress cargo spacecraft bound for the International Space Station. The Progress MS-21 ship spun out of control shortly after detaching from the station in February. A coolant leak was the likely cause. It was Russia's third Progress failure over the past couple years. Crew supplies had already been offloaded, but scientific experiments and other equipment were lost. The setback comes amid Russia's wider isolation over the invasion of Ukraine, which could spur additional space cooperation challenges. While the Russian segment of the ISS continues operating normally, the cargo ship mishaps underscore the need to maintain redundant access to the orbiting lab. NASA and other partners will provide extra supplies as needed using Dragon, Cygnus and other available cargo vehicles. Blue Origin delays first New Glenn launch to late 2024. Jeff Bezos' rocket company Blue Origin has delayed the debut launch of its orbital-class New Glenn rocket to the fourth quarter of 2024. The inaugural flight was originally planned for late 2022, but development and testing challenges have pushed the timeline. New Glenn aims to be reusable and is designed to rival SpaceX's Falcon Heavy. Powered by 7 B-4 engines, the two-stage rocket will be capable of lifting 45 metric tons to low Earth orbit and 13 tons to geostationary transfer orbit. Blue Origin continues working on rocket facilities at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 36 in Florida. The company has already booked several commercial New Glenn missions, but may lose customers with the latest delay. The setback also impacts ULA's plans to use B-4 engines on its Vulcan Centaur rocket, and that covers additional recent news spanning developments across the space industry. Please let me know